Deep in the agricultural belt of the Midwest, northern Illinois has become home for thousands of Indo-Chinese refugees. Among these are approximately 2,800 ethnic Lao people in the Elgin and Rockford areas. These people, primarily from the southern part of Laos, have been sponsored by citizens of these communities and Lao already living in the United States. Local Christian churches have also played a major role in sponsoring their resettlement. The Lao, like all refugees, are eager to adapt to their new surroundings by taking classes in English, gaining recertification in various professions, and opening their own businesses. Among the businesses recently established in these two cities are a restaurant, food stores, an electronics shop, and a textile shop. In Rockford, these are located in an older section of town formerly settled by Swedish immigrants. The Lao have also tried to retain important parts of their own heritage. A Lao Buddhist Wat, or temple, was established in each city to serve as the focus of each ethnic community. Initially, these temples were located in rented buildings. In 1982, the Lao of Elgin and Rockford combined their efforts to establish one permanent temple compound on the edge of Rockford. Wat Phothikaram is one of 17 Lao Buddhist temples established in the United States since 1975. Buddhists come from over 100 miles to participate in religious, cultural, and social activities. People may arrive any time, but Saturday is commonly the day they come to takbat, or offer food to the monks. The monks are residents of these temples, and their worldly needs are met by people's gifts and donations. The Lao community takes turns cleaning the temple and cooking for the monks. June 1983 marked a special date in Wat Phothikaram's history. The temple hosted the second annual national conference for Lao Buddhist monks. Lao, Thai, and Cambodian monks and lay people participated. Thai monks traveled from Thailand, a neighboring country of Laos, to take part in the ceremonies. In conjunction with the conference, the first major Lao temple consecration in the United States took place. The event began on Friday, June 24th, and continued on Saturday, June 25th. Ajahn Kamsan, abbot of the temple, and Kodgyal, a temple and community leader, explained.
To be able to call a temple, you have to have a special place of worship. To have this area made sacred is an event most people have never seen. It is considered to be very important for the Buddhist people because with the chanting and all the sacred things that happen, they can gain a lot of merit.
A central part of the sanctification of the Sim, or temple sanctuary, was the cornerstone laying ceremony. Dominating the Sim's altar was a large covered Buddha image. The ceremony began with chanting to attract the attention of Buddha and other divine beings. This chant always marks the beginning of a Buddhist service.
The Buddha image was covered because it had not yet been made sacred. All the chanting and performances of the monk made it sacred. After that, we unveiled the image.
A large group of monks was required to make the sanctuary, or Sim, sacred. The monks stood in one area of the room and chanted. Because there were not enough monks present to dominate all the space, the chants were repeated 3 more times. The monks chanted toward each of the 4 cardinal directions. This cleared the Sim of any evil spirits. In addition to the directional chanting, a monk sprinkled water on the altar and over the main cornerstone, which helped to further purify the area where the Buddha image would permanently reside. Outside the Sim, there were 8 cornerstones, one located at each of the major points of the compass. A main stone was also placed in the center of the sim. Once the sim was purified, these stones created a barrier to the evil spirits and helped to preserve the sacredness of the sim. The next major part of the ceremony was the assurance that the cornerstones had been properly placed outside the sim. This required a representative monk inside the sanctuary and a man outside.
The monk in the corner was asking the man outside, "What is facing the sim from out there?" The man outside replied, "There is a stone facing this way." The monk then told the group, "There is a stone." This was repeated for all 8 stones.
แกต้องมิดเนอะเอาโลดได้แล้วป่ะเนี่ย
ปุรติมายะทิสายะกิงนิมิตัง
บอกมันจะอะไร
เอสุปัสสโนนิมิตัง
เอามาบ้านนี้
After each of the 8 directions was sanctified, 2 monks chanted to clear the sim of evil spirits. Then 2 other monks declared the sim to be sacred and the area ready for further ceremonies. The principal cornerstone was placed in a hole in the center of the sanctuary.
เอาตีโอ้ยรถ
The gong was rung 3 times, signifying the end of this part of the ceremony. The sim was now a holy place. Chanting is in Pali, an ancient Indian language used throughout Laos only in the religious ceremonies. All monks cannot necessarily translate the chant into Lao, but they do understand the general meaning. As soon as the chanting was concluded, people entered the sim to make offerings.
People dropped silvers and gold pins in the hole. The pin signifies their wealth. People can also put their blood and pieces of their hair in the hole. This means they are sacrificing themselves to gain merit.
During this period, the monks ate their second and final meal of the day, which must be completed before noon. When the meal was finished, they began the ceremony to ordain new monks. The act of becoming a monk is important to Buddhist men since this earns merit for oneself and one's family. The monks, people to be ordained, and lay people circled the temple complex 3 times in a clockwise direction. Traditionally in Laos, the procession would begin in town and end by circling the sim, or sanctuary, 3 times. Since that was not possible here, the procession merely circled the temple compound. This ritual serves to announce to the public the intentions of the initiates. The ordination ceremonies were held during the consecration activities, in part so there would be enough ordained people to participate in the all-night chanting which helped to sanctify the main Buddha image. The ceremonies were also held at this time because the 20 monks necessary to conduct the ordinations were present. No more than 3 men can be ordained as monks or pra at one time. A 65-year-old man named La was a member of the first group. He had become a novice a month before. La came with his children to the United States in 1980. A farmer and vendor in Laos, he came with few skills to prosper in an industrial society. Instead, he decided to make a long-term commitment to his religion. He intends to spend the rest of his life as a monk. Their ordination began by announcing that they owed no debts, were free of crimes, were not mentally or physically handicapped, and they were willing to forget worldly ties. After accepting the initial set of 10 precepts, such as abstention from killing, stealing, eating at forbidden times, and wearing bodily adornments, they were given their robes. These and other things, such as sheets, blankets, scissors, needles, fans, and other items the monks might need, were given by sponsors. Sponsors could be family members, but in La's case, they were a Thai family. Two representative monks questioned the initiates regarding their attire. The monks asked if they had the robes and a belt and a sash. The initiates responded affirmatively. They moved to the door of the sim to declare their intentions publicly. If anyone objected, a protest could be made. Upon returning to the altar and agreeing to adhere to the 227 precepts of monkhood, La and his fellow initiates were accepted into the Buddhist order. After this, 8 initiates were also accepted. Of the 10 new monks, La and one other remain in the monkhood. Newly ordained monks are encouraged to stay at their temple for at least 3 days. On the 4th day, they are free to leave and return to their former lifestyles. This is perfectly acceptable in the Buddhist religion and makes monkhood available to men who have other obligations and cannot dedicate their entire lives to religious service. The rules by which a man becomes a monk are varied and complex. Everyone must go through the first or preparatory stage, in which they wear white robes and discard their former lifestyles. Depending on the age and circumstances of the individual, he may move to a higher stage which carries more merit. If a man is 20 years old, he may bypass the 2nd stage and move directly to monkhood, the 3rd and highest stage. Following the formal ordination of the monks, the ordination of the Jua, or 2nd-level males, took place. The ceremony itself began when the boys were presented with their new saffron robes. These boys, like the monks before them, had sponsors to supply their needs. Each boy's robes were blessed by Ajahn Kamsan, the abbot of Wat Phothikaram. The white sash was removed by a monk. The saffron sash that was slipped over their heads symbolized their transition from the 1st stage, Nak, to the 2nd stage, Jua. Candidates gathered in front of the altar. These novices, or Jua, were required to follow 10 precepts to guide their conduct. Since one of the precepts is to avoid contact with females, the boys were assisted into their new robes by Ajahn Kamsan, other monks, and male sponsors. After they had put on the rest of their robes, the ceremony continued. As they moved to a 2nd stage, they symbolically entered a new life, and past offenses or misfortunes were minimized. During the afternoon, 28 boys were ordained as novices. They stayed at the temple for 2 weeks and learned more about Buddhism from the monks. Boys become novices to acquire merit for themselves and their parents. Since women are not allowed to become monks, they are prevented from earning merit in this way. The merit earned by sons is especially valued by their mothers. Customarily in Laos, all males would become ordained for a brief period during their lives. One of the boys became a novice this day because he had been extremely ill when he was small. His mother stated that after he received medical help from a monk, the parents promised that the boy would become a novice when he was old enough. A male often becomes a novice or monk when a close relative dies. It is believed that the novice or monk helps lead the dead person's soul to heaven. An ordination ceremony for a different group of people then took place. Men wishing to serve as aides for ceremonies or as elders of the temple become Pokau, while women wishing to make more merit become Makau. They accepted 8 precepts similar to the novices, but wore white rather than the saffron robes. The white robes symbolized purity. The initiates promised to follow these precepts for 1 to 3 days, although some wished to remain Pokau or Makau the rest of their lives. All women who become permanent Makau shave their heads like monks, although they do not live at temples. There are only a few Makow living in the United States at the present time. One such woman, now living in Wisconsin, was present at the ceremonies. She no longer has family obligations and now feels she can devote herself to religion. Some of the Makow are also consulted by members of their Buddhist community for their spiritual healing abilities. Now that the sim had been sanctified and the ordinations completed, the principal Buddha image had to be made sacred before it could be unveiled. This image had been donated by the Thai temple in Chicago. The Lao and the Thai both practiced Theravada Buddhism, one of the two major sects of the religion. Buddhists believe it is necessary to create a bond between the main image and everything and everyone in the sim. To do this, they tied string to the image, strung it around the room, and wrapped it around objects. Chanting again cleansed the sim of evil spirits. Good spirits were invited to remain. The string was passed from monk to monk and laced through their hands. This created an unbroken circle for the entire sim. Meanwhile, the Makow and lay people outside the sim took part in the ceremony by sitting on mats and listening. When this series of chants was finished, ordained people began an all-night vigil. These included monks, Paw-Cow, and Makow. After 1 hour of chanting, these people were replaced by other ordained individuals. Lay people were not allowed in the sim until the image was unveiled in the morning. The next morning, the string used to sanctify the image was cut by the abbot, and pieces were tied on children's wrists. This served to bring good luck and good health to them. On Saturday, the people presented food and gifts to the monks. The food offerings, or takbat, occurs each morning in Laos, but is generally restricted to the weekend at Wat Phothikaram. Other arrangements are made to provide them with food during the week. This takbat was especially large due to the occasion. Food varied from traditional items such as fruit and sticky rice to cakes and Twinkies. Gifts of money were usually in the form of new bills folded to resemble a flower. The money was given to maintain and improve the temple. These gifts were offered for merit, which could then be transferred to the giver's ancestors. The ceremony was started by a male elder, or Paw-Cow, who led the chanting and was continued by a monk. The monks then assembled with their alms bowls. Circulating among the crowd, they received the gifts. People making offerings traditionally take a position lower than the monks and wear sashes. Women are not allowed to touch the monks or their bowls as they drop offerings inside. Before giving the food to the monks, people raise the gifts to their foreheads to direct the merit to their ancestors or toward the next life. The overflow from the monks' bowls was placed in plastic bags. This is an adaptation of the traditional baskets used in Laos. The food, now considered blessed, was separated later and shared first by monks and then by the lay people. After the takbat, people gathered informally and were free to place personal items in the corner stone hole in the center of the sim. Small items were wrapped in squares of material before being placed in the hole. The hole and its contents were later covered to be left undisturbed. Outside, money trees and other larger gifts were presented to the monks for use at the temple. In addition, general announcements were given by leading members of the community. After the monks had eaten, everyone else had lunch.
Authorities are trying to determine the cause of a fire at a Buddhist temple on Rockford's east side. Close to $30,000 worth of damage was done. 60% of the interior was destroyed. Firefighters got to the Phothikaram temple just after midnight. They say the building was engulfed in flames when they arrived. 4 of the monks who lived there received minor burns and were treated at the scene.
The fire at the temple was caused by an electrical short in the monks' living quarters. The damage was extensive, but did not reach the sim, which is attached to the rest of the temple. Ajahn Kamsan believes it is significant that the sim was not burned. This area had been made a sacred place in June, and he believes this fact protected the sim from the flames. Valuable items inside the living quarters were destroyed. Sacred religious books were burned, as well as a large bowl of medicinal herbs that had been brought from Laos. Although the 4 monks residing at the temple at the time of the fire were given the option to stay in a motel with money from their insurance company, they decided they could not leave the temple. The fire occurred during Pansa, the season of Buddhist Lent, and a time when monks are not permitted to stay away from their temples overnight. The monks did not wish to break with tradition, despite the inconveniences of no running water and no electricity. Following custom, members of the Lao community supplied the monks' basic needs. In a few months, the temple was rebuilt and ceremonies were held once again. The monks intend to host a large ceremony in June of 1984 to honor the remodeled building. The monks and people of Wat Phothikaram have high hopes for the future of the temple. Wat Phothikaram, now a properly consecrated temple, is the only Lao temple in the United States where official ordinations can take place. They would eventually like to raise enough money to purchase land adjacent to the temple compound. Money is collected through personal donations and fundraising events such as Lao festivals. The new land would first be made into a parking lot. Presently, adequate parking space is a serious problem. Another desire is to build a Lao-style temple. In Laos, the sim is never attached to the place where the monks sleep. Building a separate sim would allow the monks to follow traditional Lao custom. They also want a larger area for religious gatherings. As one community leader stated, Wat Phothikaram may become a center for Lao Buddhism in the Midwest.
We hope to be a complete Lao Buddhist temple in the Midwest area, if not all the United States.
Although they are in a new land and surrounded by a vastly different culture, the monks try to preserve their religion basically as it was in Laos. Fundamental ideas and structures of Buddhism have been retained, although certain changes have been made in some ceremonies and rituals. Instead of walking around town every morning accepting people's offerings, the monks are provided with food on a weekly basis and have a freezer in which to store items. Due to northern Illinois' cold weather, the monks often wear socks, shoes, hats, and coats when they go out. Traditionally, they wear only their robes and sandals or go barefoot. The monks feel it is important for the Lao children to learn Lao religious beliefs and customs, in addition to learning American ones. It is important for Lao children to understand their own cultural heritage. Before the fire at the temple, classes were held in the basement to teach the native language and Lao etiquette. The temple is considered a public building and is often used for purposes other than religious ones.
Everybody has to understand the culture of this country because we are staying here. But we are trying to preserve our own culture and tradition as much as we can.
Despite being located in a land where the predominant religion is Christianity, the monks and other Lao believe Christianity and Buddhism can coexist.
Every religion is basically the same. They all are teaching us to be good. Therefore, there is no conflict of interest between the churches and the temple.
Many Lao attend the Buddhist temple on Saturday and a Christian church on Sunday. Buddhists are not obligated to attend the temple on a regular basis. They may go whenever it is convenient. Also, Buddhists do not try to convert other people to their religion, They believe it is up to the individual to decide which faith to practice. When asked about the future for Buddhism in America, Ajahn Khamsan stated that he believes it can only get better. He also sees a bright future for Wat Phothikaram. The abbot has traveled to many places in the United States, but likes his temple and likes living in Rockford. Ajahn Khamsan has learned to enjoy the change of seasons.